Developing the knight to f3 is a flexible opening, allowing for various pawn structures and often leading to a quiet, positional game. Mirroring the knight's development immediately challenges central space and hints at symmetrical struggles ahead. Asserting central dominion, d4 prepares for rapid development and opens lines for the bishops. Establishing central presence, black challenges white's early territorial claims and prepares for rapid piece development. Challenging the central pawn structure, c4 immediately creates dynamic tension and aims for queenside expansion. Solidifying the center, e6 prepares to develop the bishop and reinforces the d5 pawn, creating a firm pawn chain. Developing the knight here solidifies the center's grip and prepares for potential queenside expansion, creating a solid pawn formation. Challenging white's central pawn structure, black boldly opens lines for piece activity. Sacrificing the pawn opens up the queenside for aggressive piece play. Reclaiming the pawn with the knight solidifies the center and keeps the pawn structure intact. Solidifying the center and preparing to develop, the bishop aims for a comfortable, balanced position. Developing the bishop efficiently prepares castling while preparing to contest the center. Developing the bishop to this square initiates a strategic skirmish for central control, preparing to pressure black's queenside. Developing the knight to a central outpost solidifies black's pawn structure and prepares for potential pawn breaks or further piece activity. Securing the monarch ushers in a new phase, preparing to contest central control and potential piece activity. Opening the center allows pieces to develop more freely, but be mindful of the exposed king if white's attack gains momentum. Opens the e-file for potential future pressure, while also solidifying central pawn control. Securing the monarch provides immediate peace of mind, allowing focus on developing piece harmony. Developing the bishop to a square where it eyes the king side, preparing for potential pawn advances or tactical opportunities. Securing the queen side and preparing for potential queenside expansion. This move addresses immediate pawn structure concerns while setting up future activity. Repositioning the bishop to the central diagonal prepares for potential pawn advances and controls key squares, solidifying the kingside while maintaining flexibility. Opening a dynamic avenue for the knight, this sortie targets the queen's potential retreat and aims to disrupt white's central pawn structure. Preparing to retreat the bishop from its current commanding diagonal, aiming to free up the d3 square for another piece, perhaps a rook, and to avoid any potential tactical skirmishes involving the knight on b4. Black bravely challenges white's queenside pawn structure, aiming to open lines and activate the queenside minor pieces. Sharpening the knight's reach, white prepares to contest central influence and potentially launch an attack on the kingside. Targeting the weak d4 pawn with the bishop establishes a powerful attacking avenue and prepares for potential piece exchanges. Clearing the d-file allows a potential queen sortie while maintaining piece harmony. This maneuver redirects the queen to the queenside, establishing an outpost and preparing for potential pawn advances like b4. Re-establishing the kingside rook presence, aiming to pressure black's central pawn structure and open lines. Concentrating forces along the open c-file aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and activate the rook. Targeting the bishop, this maneuver aims to disrupt black's harmonious development and potentially create weaknesses around their king. Undermining the knight's outpost, this pawn advance aims to disrupt white's central control and potentially open lines for black's pieces. Reclaiming the bishop to its previous, more active diagonal seems like a hesitant retreat, allowing black further central influence. Preparing for a powerful queenside push and eyeing the d4 pawn, this aims to activate the queen on a more influential diagonal. Probing the queenside, this knight aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and exploit the weakened squares. Liberating the bishop from the cramped, bind on b1 opens up tactical possibilities and begins to counter white's queenside space advantage. Reclaiming the pawn immediately opens lines and forces black to defend their vulnerable queen's side. The queen's relocation strategically reclaims central influence, but opens avenues for white's d-pawn to advance, creating a potential outpost. Unlocking the central diagonals, this knight now eyes potential for decisive pressure. A timely retreat, repositioning the knight to solidify the queenside pawn structure and potentially launch a counterattack. Recentering the bishop allows it to eye the weak d-pawn and supports potential queenside expansion. Steering the queen to the queenside creates a dynamic pawn structure and opens avenues for counterplay. Solidifying the kingside pawns offers protection, preventing potential disruptions to the white king's safety. Seeking to disrupt white's central control, this maneuver aims to exploit the d4 pawn's potential vulnerability and open lines towards the king. Gaining influence over the queenside and preparing to exploit weaknesses created by black's pawn structure. A tactical probe to dislodge the strong knight and potentially open lines around the white king, but it risks weakening black's pawn structure. Refocusing the bishop to a more active diagonal, potentially threatening the kingside. Seeking an escape from immediate pressure, kh8 prioritizes king's safety and prepares to rejoin the game on the kingside. Refocusing the bishop to the central diagonal intensifies pressure on black's underdeveloped queenside. Challenging the central pawn structure opens up lines and creates a dynamic imbalance. Capturing that bishop simplifies the pawn structure, potentially opening lines for your queen. Reclaiming the center and solidifying piece harmony, this recapture activates the bishop and prepares for future pawn advances. A subtle repositioning, the queen now eyes the kingside and prepares a potential queenside advance. Reclaiming central influence and preparing a rook sortie to the c-file, this move seeks to activate passive pieces. Asserting dominion over the open c-file is a key objective now. Reclaiming the open c-file with the rook aims to challenge white's central control and prepare for pawn pushes. This repositioning of the queen now pressures black's isolated queenside pawns and prepares potential breakthroughs. Reclaiming the d-file with the rook solidifies black's central influence and prepares for potential breakthroughs. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure, this maneuver prepares for future queenside expansion and supports the rook's advance. Controlling the crucial e-file, black prepares to challenge white's central pawns and open up attacking avenues. Opening the queen's diagonal, this seeks to exploit the central pawn structure's weakness and prepare for an immediate central initiative. Reactivating the knight to a more central square offers better prospects for counterplay than its passive post on d5. Initiating a powerful knight outpost on c6, aiming to dominate the crucial d4 square and disrupt black's coordination. Unburdening the queenside, black concedes the e-file's full power, but simplifies and aims for active piece play. Capturing the pawn opens a crucial file, aiming to exploit black's potentially exposed king. A bold attempt to lure the queen deep into enemy territory, but it invites immense pressure on the d-file and leaves the king exposed. Unleashing a crushing tactic that immediately exploits the exposed black king and the weak queen. Nudging the knight to e8 prepares a potential regrouping or an aggressive pawn push on the kingside, aiming to disrupt white's queenside pressure. Capturing the pawn opens the queen's access to the kingside, potentially creating mating threats. Unleashing a potent counterattack, black aims to disrupt white's king safety by exploiting the open file and weakened pawn structure. Unleashing a rook to dominate the 8th rank, white seeks to dismantle black's defense. Threatening to create a dangerous passed pawn, black aims to disrupt white's centralized pieces and potentially open up lines for counterplay. Trading these rooks simplifies the position, potentially opening a path for the white king to become more active in the ensuing endgame. Reclaiming the knight, black aims to regroup and defend the vulnerable king, hoping to weather the storm. Clearing the path for the rook to dominate the 7th rank, aiming to dismantle black's weakened queenside pawn structure. Snatching the pawn abandons the important central king cover. Activating the rook opens a new avenue of attack, creating immediate pressure on black's queenside pawns. seeking to exploit the open files and create mating threats against white's exposed monarch. The rook recapture activates your queen, threatening a swift victory by gobbling up unprotected material. The black queen decisively intercepts the pawn race, aiming to exploit the exposed white king for immediate tactical opportunities. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure, guarding against any immediate royal threats from that side of the board. Re-establishing queenside presence, this allows black's queen to potentially harass the white pawn chain and support a future A5 push. Initiating a swift rook lift to exploit the open g-file and menace the weakened black king. A defensive adjustment, preventing the knight's potential jump to g4. Opening a diagonal for the queen to infiltrate the kingside. Repositioning the queen to a safer square, away from the attacking rook. The bishop vacates its post, aiming to exploit the queen's potentially compromised square. A bold maneuver, aiming to reroute the queen to more active squares while maintaining a defensive structure. Aggressively opening the kingside further invites counterplay, potentially exposing the king. Reactivating the queen to the center offers dynamic attacking possibilities. This pawn push opens a dangerous diagonal for the queen and threatens a breakthrough. Seeking respite, the king ventures from the shadows but remains exposed to the oncoming storm. Reinforcing that strong bishop's outpost on d8, a key control point. Disrupting the queen's position forces a new tactical reality, potentially opening lines for the rook. Securing the king's escape route offers immediate safety from that persistent bishop check. Challenging white's control of the central squares, the queen ventures out, seeking counterplay and disrupting white's tidy coordination. Exploring the kingside pawn structure, white aims to create potential weaknesses or launch a slow advance. Initiating a subtle repositioning of the knight to prepare for potential complications on the kingside. Unlocking the queen's attack by clearing the diagonal, this capture simplifies the material and targets black's exposed king. The queen's exchange simplifies into a pawn endgame where your king faces considerable pressure on the open files. King activation now becomes the priority, aiming to centralize the monarch and support the advancing pawns. This queen repositioning aims to disrupt white's central control and potentially create new attacking avenues, albeit with some risk. Centralizing the king here prepares for the upcoming pawn endgame, seeking a more active role. The bishop's retreat aims to regroup and perhaps prepare a kingside pawn push, but it allows white's queen to penetrate deeper into black's territory. King's adventurous march aims to disrupt black's well-positioned queen and rook on the open central files. A forcing check, seeking to reposition the queen and disrupt white's consolidating pieces for potential counterplay. Centering the king now offers a safe harbor while white consolidates their material advantage. Shifting the queen to that square forces a response, potentially creating new opportunities or simplifying the position. Transferring the king to the center now aims to solidify central control and prepare for further offensive action. Sacrificing the queen to force a king hunt into a likely drawn endgame. Steering the king towards safety on the queen side, preparing for a potential pawn race as the endgame tightens. The black queen's persistent checks, while forcing concessions, have also steered the game towards a simplified endgame where white's king's safety is not a major concern. The king cautiously seeks refuge from the checks, aiming to solidify its position. Seeking respite, the black king retreats from the oppressive central files, hoping to find safety behind its pawns. Repositioning the monarch to the edge of the board might seem passive, but it guards against immediate checks and prepares for a potential pawn push. Unleashing a king check, this maneuver seeks to disrupt white's centralized king and perhaps gain a tempo for material advantage or a decisive pawn push. The king's renewed escape to the kingside promises a safer haven from the relentless queen. This discovered check creates immediate danger for white's king and forces a response.